Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I'm your host. And today we aren't just analyzing a topic or a news story. We are essentially stepping into a very specific and very charged room.
Glad to be back. And yeah, I think event might actually be too mild a word for what we're looking at today.
Right. I mean, the organizers and the people who were there, they described it as electric and magical, even a whirlwind. So let's transport you, the listener, to this packed hall on February 11th.
The descriptions really are intense. We are talking about a space that was literally overflowing. It was hot, the air was thick with adrenaline, and you have this group of people who for the last 5 years have felt like they were screaming into the void.
Yeah, screaming into the void is a good way to put it. And suddenly they look around and everyone is nodding. It's a very specific kind of energy.
It's that classic moment of finding your tribe. But in this case, the tribe consists of doctors and scientists and data analysts who feel they've been exiled from their own professions.
So it's a gathering of the professionally marginalized?
Exactly, a gathering of outcasts.
So to set the stage for you listening, we're diving into the aftermath of what was called the Battle for Science. This was a 2-day event organized by Lighthouse TV. And just to be clear for anyone who might not be familiar,
This is not a mainstream medical conference.
definitely not. You aren't going to see Pfizer sponsors in the lobby here.
Not a chance. This is the absolute counter-narrative.
Right. So our source material for this deep dive is a day-after talk show. It features the organizer Flavio Pesquino and some key Dutch figures reflecting on what just went down at the event.
Our mission today is to unpack the perspectives of these dissidents. We really want to understand what the world looks like from their vantage point.
And just to set the ground rules here for you guys listening, we are acting as neutral observers. We are reporting on the viewpoints and the arguments, and honestly, the very raw emotions presented at this event by the speakers in our source material.
Right. This is an incredibly polarizing topic.
Very. And we aren't here to endorse the claims or to debunk them line by line. Our job is to show you the landscape of this parallel society that is forming.
Precisely. We are looking at the logic of the people in that hall. Whether you agree with them or think they've completely lost the plot, it is crucial to understand why they believe what they believe.
So here is our roadmap for this deep dive. We're going to start with the emotional toll on these experts, which is something they call the sadness paradox.
It's a really poignant concept.
It is. Then we're going to deep dive into the story of Rob Ellens and the Veritas Award.
That is a key segment. Rob Ellens is arguably the protagonist of this entire Dutch movement. His story really illustrates the conflict between the individual clinical judgment of a doctor and the bureaucratic protocols of the state.
Then we get into the heavy machinery. We need to talk about the mafia accusations against Big Pharma, and we need to get a bit technical about the emergency use authorization.
They have a very specific legal theory about why certain treatments were suppressed, and we really need to understand the mechanics of that argument.
It's the linchpin of their entire worldview regarding the vaccines. After that, we'll look at the shift from medicine to healing or functional medicine. And finally,
Hold on to your hats for this one.
yeah, the pivot to beyond science. We're talking consciousness UFOs and non-human intelligence.
I know it sounds like a hard left turn, but when you follow their logic, it's actually an incredibly consistent path.
So let's get right into it. Segment 1, the gathering of outcasts. Let's talk about the vibe in that room.
Yeah, Flavio Pesquino, the organizer, honestly, he looked shell-shocked in a good way in the
He
footage.
kept smiling, right? He kept saying it was surreal.
That word surreal came up a lot, and you have to understand the context here. For 5 years, these people, Pasquino, Rob, Ellens, Maurice DeHond, have mostly interacted through screens.
They've been fighting digital battles.
Exactly. They've been deplatformed, banned from LinkedIn, kicked off YouTube. They've been existing in a sort of digital bunker.
So to suddenly be in a physical space with thousands of people,
It changes everything. To suddenly see these people in 3D, to share a croissant at breakfast with international heavy hitters, Pasquino called it magical because it validates your existence.
when you are online, it's easy to feel like you are just data or just an avatar.
Right, but when you are in a room with 1,000 breathing, sweating people, you are a movement.
He described the hall as kolkende, which in Dutch means churning or boiling with energy. He said it was blood hot at the end and the ventilation couldn't keep up, but nobody cared. It was this mixture of euphoria and relief.
Oh, but then you have Maurice DeHaan.
All right, the famous Dutch data analyst. For our international listeners, think of him as the Nate Silver of the Netherlands.
He said something that really stuck with me.
The sad aftertaste.
Yes, the sad aftertaste. Let's unpack that, because why would a victory lap feel sad?
This is what we're calling the sadness paradox. DeHaan is a very analytical guy. He looked around that room and he didn't just see a cheering crowd. He saw a tragedy.
How so?
Well, look at who was actually in the room. These weren't professional revolutionaries. They weren't anarchists who just hate the system for the sake of it.
No, they were cardiologists. Cardiologists, general practitioners, scientists with PhDs. These are people who, prior to 2020, were the absolute pillars of the establishment. They were the people you went to for advice.
They were literally just doing their jobs.
Exactly. And DeHaan's insight is that these people didn't wake up one day wanting to burn down the medical system. They simply spotted discrepancies.
They looked at the data, or they looked at their patients, and they said, hey, this protocol doesn't match what I'm seeing. Or this data set has a flaw.
And historically, that used to be called peer review.
Or just scientific debate.
Right.
Hmm.
But in the climate of the pandemic, that questioning led to them being ostracized. They became outcasts. So DeHaan's sadness comes from the realization of how much talent and expertise has been purged from the mainstream.
He's looking at a room full of brilliant people who are effectively unemployed or marginalized simply because they ask questions.
Precisely. It's a feeling of institutional grief. Like, we shouldn't have to be meeting like this in secret, essentially. We should be at a normal medical conference.
It highlights a massive fracture in the scientific community. DeHaan feels it is tragic that the system couldn't tolerate dissent. So you have this room full of expertise that is currently operating outside the system.
Building a parallel reality because the main reality completely rejected them.
And they weren't alone in this. This wasn't just a local Dutch support group. They flew in some serious names from the international scene.
The list is really impressive for this specific demographic. Del Bigtree, Dr. Peter McCullough, Heiko Schoening, Ivor Cummins, John Leake.
For you guys listening who might not follow the skeptical movement closely, who are these guys?
These are the global heavyweights of the COVID skeptic narrative. Dr. Peter McCullough, for example, is a cardiologist who became one of the most vocal critics of the vaccine rollout globally. Del Bigtree produces The Highwire, which is a massive media platform for this movement.
So having them there physically,
Yeah.
that really changes the dynamic, doesn't it?
Completely. It validated the local Dutch struggle. It told the Dutch doctors you aren't crazy and you aren't alone. This is a global phenomenon.
It transforms a local grievance into a worldwide crusade.
Exactly. And Flavio mentioned that he feels the silent majority is finally waking up. He used phrases like winning and breaking through.
That's a very confident stance for a group that calls itself outcasts.
It is. He pointed to things like the Epstein files, which are leaks that they feel vindicate their positions on government overreach.
There's a sense in the air that the dam is cracking.
They firmly believe that the general public is starting to sense that something wasn't right, and that gives them a massive injection of energy.
It's interesting. Usually when you talk about marginalized groups, the vibe is very defensive. But here, the vibe sounds almost offensive. Not offensive as in rude, but offensive as in on the attack.
That's a great observation. Del Bigtree was explicitly urging everyone to speak out, speak out. It wasn't a therapy session, it was a rally. They feel the tide is turning, and they want to be the ones steering the ship when it does.
Let's move to one of the specific soldiers in this battle. We really need to talk about Rob Ellens.
Yes, the Rob Ellens case study is crucial to understanding this whole event.
He received the first ever Veritas Award, specifically the Hippocrates Award. And looking at the footage, the man was physically shaken.
He really was. He described it vividly. Heart palpitations, sweating. He said he felt immense pride, but also a sort of disbelief. You have to understand the psychological weight this man has been carrying around for years.
So who is Rob Ellens in the context of the Netherlands?
He is, in many ways, patient zero of the Dutch medical resistance. He was just a regular GP in a small town. And then early in the pandemic, he went on national TV on a show called OP1.
And he didn't exactly stick to the script.
He certainly did not. He openly discussed using off-label medication to treat COVID-19. He was using a protocol that included hydroxychloroquine or HCQ zinc and ivermectin.
Now we know how controversial those drugs became. But at the time, he was just saying, I'm using this and my patients are getting better.
Right, but the backlash was instantaneous. He wasn't just disagreed with, he was framed as reckless.
The phrase that clearly haunts him, and he brought it up specifically, was being accused of treating his patients like guinea pigs. In Dutch, proefkonijn.
That's a heavy, heavy accusation for a doctor. The Hippocratic Oath is first, do no harm. Calling his patients guinea pigs implies he was experimenting on them without caring about their safety.
It strikes at the very core of his professional identity. And it wasn't just words either. He faced 16 lawsuits.
16 legal challenges.
That is wild.
He's won 7, lost 5, and is appealing 10. He's been fined. He's had the inspectorate breathing down his neck for years. He's been fighting for his license, his reputation, and his livelihood.
So standing on that stage holding a statue of Hippocrates, that's not just an award, that's a profound vindication.
It's a message from his peers, or at least this specific group of peers, saying you were right, you followed your oath.
He mentioned that he recently got re-registered for 5 years so he can practice until 2031. He sees the award as a symbol that will guide him through the next phase.
But we really need to dig into the actual crime here, because Illens and the panel spent a lot of time deconstructing the legal basis of why he was targeted in the first place.
And it centers on this concept of off-label prescribing.
This is where we need to get a bit technical, because the general public often completely misunderstands this term.
Yeah, I think when most people hear off-label, they automatically think illegal or experimental.
Exactly. They think it means using a drug in a way that isn't safe. But off-label simply means using a drug for a condition that it wasn't originally approved for by the regulatory body.
And here's the key fact for you listening. Off-label prescribing is entirely standard in medicine.
It happens every single day in hospitals around the world.
Elon brought up some really striking examples to prove this double standard, didn't he?
He did. He brought up Seroquel. Now, Seroquel is a powerful antipsychotic medication. It's approved for things like schizophrenia. But Elon cited data, and this is a very well-known phenomenon in medicine, that there are roughly 800,000 prescriptions of Seroquel in the Netherlands used for sleep problems.
800,000.
Yes. Doctors literally call it the anti-worry pill. You have an elderly patient who can't sleep. You give them a low dose of Seroquel.
And that is strictly off-label.
Completely off-label. It is not approved for insomnia. But nobody is getting fined for writing those scripts.
So his argument is you let 800,000 people take an antipsychotic for sleep off-label, but you fine me for giving zinc and HCQ to COVID patients.
Precisely. And he listed others, too. Propranolol, which is a blood pressure and heart medication, is routinely prescribed for exam anxiety. Chloramphenicol eye ointment is used for babies in ways not strictly on the label.
His point is that off-label is the norm when a doctor uses their clinical judgment.
Right. So why was his specific off-label use treated as a literal crime?
That's the million-dollar question. And the inspectorate applied a set of guidelines to him that he argues are practically impossible to follow.
The consultation rule.
Right. The guidelines imply that for every off-label prescription, the doctor must consult with the pharmacist.
And Ellens did the math on this.
Yeah.
If he followed that rule for every off-label script he writes, including the Seroquel, the propranolol, all of it, he would be calling the pharmacist 5 to 10 times a day.
Which would bring the entire healthcare system to a grinding halt.
It's bureaucratic gridlock. It's totally unworkable. So his defense is, I followed the standard of care that we use for everything else. I used my clinical judgment.
And the results? Did his guinea pig suffer?
This is his strongest defense by far. He claims that through his network of doctors and apothecaries, they helped 5,000 patients.
And according to Elans, there were 0 calamities reported by the inspectorate regarding his patients.
0. 0 deaths or serious injuries attributed to his treatment. He really emphasizes that the fine he received was purely administrative.
It wasn't because he harmed a patient?
No, it was because he didn't follow the administrative protocol of consultation.
That distinction is massive. And it fuels the anger in that room like nothing else. Because if the patients didn't die, and the drugs are generally safe enough for other uses, why the witch hunt?
Which leads us directly to the darker side of the conversation. If it wasn't about safety, what was it actually about?
This brings us to segment 3. The mechanics of suppression. Flavio and Elans have a theory, and it's not a comfortable one to hear.
No, it's not. They argue it comes down to money and power, specifically the mechanics of the EUA, the Emergency Use Authorization.
We hear that acronym a lot, EUA, but I don't think people realize the specific legal triggers involved.
It's crucial to understand this, to understand their viewpoint. An EUA is like a break glass in case of fire law. It allows governments to bypass the standard multi-year testing and approval process for vaccines or drugs during a crisis.
But, and this is a huge but, there is a legal condition attached to it.
Which is that an EUA can typically only be granted if there are no existing effective treatments available.
Wait, let me make sure I understand this fully. If there is a pill on the shelf, let's just say aspirin, that cures the disease, The government cannot legally fast-track a vaccine.
That is exactly the argument they are making based on FDA and EMA regulations. If HCQ or ivermectin were acknowledged by the health authorities as effective treatments, the legal justification for the emergency use authorization would completely collapse.
And if the EUA collapses?
The vaccines would have to go through the standard normal approval process.
Which takes years.
Years. Which means missing the pandemic market entirely. Ellens noted that Pfizer made 9 billion euros in the Netherlands alone in 2023. We are talking about staggering amounts of money.
So the accusation, and let's be very clear here, this is the accusation coming from the event itself, is that effective treatments had to be suppressed. Not because they didn't work, but because if they did work, they would legally block the vaccine rollout.
Yes, they argue it wasn't a scientific disagreement at all. It was a market protection strategy. They believed the government and the pharmaceutical companies worked in lockstep to ensure no alternative therapies could threaten the legal pathway for the vaccine.
That implies a level of coordination that is, well, it's criminal, essentially.
It implies a massive conspiracy, and that is why the anger in the room was so palpable. They don't see themselves as victims of bad science. They see themselves as victims of a global financial crime.
And the rhetoric at the event reflected that. Del Bigtree didn't just talk about money, he elevated it to a spiritual war.
Bigtree is a very different kind of speaker than Ellens. Ellens is a clinical doctor. Bigtree is an orator. He frames this as a literal clash of religions.
He used the Garden of Eden metaphor.
Right. He outlines two worldviews. On one side, you have the naturalist view. This believes that humans are divinely designed. Our immune systems are perfect, capable, and adaptable. We have co-evolved with viruses for millions of years.
Nature knows best.
Exactly. On the other side, he sees a technocratic religion. This is the view that nature is deeply flawed, that humans are inherently weak or diseased by default, and that we must be fixed or upgraded with man-made technology and injections.
He actually said they believe you are a disease.
It's an incredibly powerful, polarizing line. He argues that the medical establishment views a healthy, unvaccinated child as a threat, a disease vector, rather than a perfect creation.
He frames the conflict as good versus evil.
It's effective rhetoric because it removes any middle ground. You're either with nature or you're with the machine.
Exactly. But then you had Heiko Schoening, the German doctor. He didn't use religious language. He used purely criminal language.
He dropped the M-bomb.
The mafia.
Yes, he explicitly called the interplay between biosolution companies and health sectors organized crime. He said American company is mafia organization.
Let's pause on that for a second. When a doctor in a suit stands on a public stage and calls the health system the mafia, that is a point of no return.
It certainly feels like burning the bridge permanently.
It is. You don't try to reform the mafia. You don't sit down and have a polite debate with the mafia over a cup of coffee. You fight them.
This rhetoric signals that this group has completely given up on trying to fix the system from within. They view it as a predatory entity that needs to be dismantled or escaped entirely.
And I have to play devil's advocate here for a moment. Isn't that dangerous rhetoric? If you tell people their doctors are part of the mafia, aren't you risking total societal breakdown? People still need to trust the ER doctor when they have a heart attack.
That is the ultimate risk. And that is the exact question I think a lot of listeners would have right now. If you destroy trust in the institution completely, what replaces it? But from their perspective, the trust was already broken by the institution. They would argue they're just calling a spade a spade.
And if the health system is the predator who is protecting it, according to Maurice DeHaan, it's the media.
Which brings us to segment 4, the media landscape. DeHaan had a very catchy, very biting phrase for this.
Guard dogs of power.
Right. He argued that the media shifted from being watchdogs of democracy to guard dogs of power.
Meaning they protect the state rather than the people.
Exactly. He argues that traditionally the media's job is to find the counter-narrative. If the government says A is true, the journalist's first instinct should be, let me check if B is true.
Skepticism.
Skepticism is the job description. But DeHaan argues that during the pandemic, the media united with the government to enforce a single narrative. They stopped asking questions and started attacking anyone who did.
This connects directly to the discussion about the NCTV, the Dutch National Coordinator for Security and Counterterrorism. Apparently, there have been reports framing distrust of the government as a potential security threat.
And the panel found that absolutely terrifying. They argued that distrust is a civic virtue. It is the fundamental attitude of a free press and a free people.
If you trust power blindly, you aren't a citizen. You're a subject.
They feel that by labeling distrust as dangerous, The state is effectively outlawing critical thinking.
And they use a very specific weapon to enforce this. The WAPI label.
For our international listeners, we definitely need to explain WAPI because it sounds almost cute, but it's really not.
No, it's derogatory.
Yeah.
It's Dutch slang for a nut job, a conspiracy theorist, someone who has completely lost touch with reality.
It's the direct equivalent of tinfoil hat wearer.
Linneke van der Grey, a GP on the panel, noted how effective this word is as a silencing mechanism. She said the moment you ask a question, whether it's about a vaccine side effect or the efficacy of masks or even about aliens, you get branded a WAPI.
And once you are branded,
The conversation just ends. It saves the establishment the trouble of actually debating the facts. If you're a WAPI, your arguments don't count. You are socially radioactive.
it's a highly efficient way to dismiss the person so you don't have to address the argument.
Exactly. But what was fascinating at this event is that they seem to be reclaiming the word. They're wearing it almost like a badge of honor now. Like if being a WAPI means asking questions, then I'm a WAPI.
So we've diagnosed the problem from their perspective. The medical system is corrupt, the media is complicit, and the doctors who speak out are outcasts.
That's a bleak picture. What's the solution?
This is where the event shifted gears significantly. Segment 5, the paradigm shift. Moving from medicine to healing.
Linneke van der Grey wrote a book with a title that really sums this up. Did we study medicine or geneeskunde?
It's a great play on words in Dutch. Geneeskunde literally translates to the art of healing or curing skill.
And her conclusion.
Her conclusion after 30 years as a practicing GP was that she wasn't doing geneeskunde. She wasn't actually curing anyone.
That has to be a heartbreaking realization for a doctor.
It is. She realized she was just managing chronic symptoms. High blood pressure. Here's a beta blocker. High cholesterol. Here's a statin. Pain. Here's a painkiller.
You take the pills until you die, but the underlying disease never goes away.
She called it pill pushing.
She did. She argues that the current system is completely designed to manage decline, not to restore health. So she is advocating for a massive move toward functional medicine.
Explain that for us. How is functional medicine different?
Well, functional medicine stops asking what is the symptom and starts asking why is the symptom happening.
It's like being a biological detective.
Exactly. Why is the blood pressure high in the first place? Is it stress? Is it chronic inflammation? Is it poor sleep? Is it a nutrient deficiency? It focuses on the root causes. It treats the lifestyle, not just the lab result.
And to prove this works, they brought up a story that really seemed to resonate with the crowd. The story of Terry Walls.
This is a very sticky example. If you want to convince people that they don't need the pharmaceutical industry, the Terry Walls story is your best weapon.
Who is she?
Dr. Terry Walls is an American internist. She was diagnosed with severe multiple sclerosis, or MS-like. And despite being a doctor and having access to the absolute best standard of care drugs, she steadily got worse.
She ended up in a zero-gravity tilt-recline wheelchair.
The system completely failed her.
It did. So she decided to hack her own biology. She went back to the basic science. She studied mouse models of MS and looked at what the brain actually chemically needs to repair myelin, which is the insulation around our nerves.
And she didn't find a new drug. She found food.
She designed a protocol based on intense nutrition. And when I say intense, I really mean it. This isn't just eat a salad with dinner.
Break it down for us.
She advocates for 9 cups of vegetables a day. That's roughly a kilogram of plant matter every single day.
A kilo. That is a lot of chewing.
It is a massive amount of food. It's broken down into 3 strict categories: 300 grams of leafy greens like kale and spinach, 300 grams of sulfur-rich vegetables like onions, garlic, and mushrooms, which are crucial for detoxification.
And 300 grams of deeply colored vegetables.
Right, berries, beets, carrots for the antioxidants, plus grass-fed meat, fatty fish, seaweed, and organ meats.
And the result of all this.
She healed herself. She got out of the wheelchair. She rides a bike to work now. There are videos of her walking around on stage presenting this data.
That is incredible.
For the people in that hall, this story is the holy grail. It proves that the body has an innate capacity to heal itself if you just give it the right building blocks.
And it reinforces their suspicion that the pharmaceutical industry has absolutely no interest in telling you to eat sulfur-rich vegetables because, well, you can't patent cabbage.
It fits perfectly with Del Bigtree's Garden of Eden philosophy. The body is capable, we just need to stop poisoning it and start nourishing it.
It empowers the patient. It says you don't need the expert in the white coat to save you. You can save yourself at the grocery store.
Okay, so that's the grounded, earthy side of their new direction. Eat your veggies, trust nature. But then they took a massive left turn.
A sharp left turn, straight into the Twilight Zone.
Segment 6. The future. Flavio announced the next event coming up in September. It's called Battle Beyond Science.
And the topic list is, well, it's not cholesterol. It's non-human intelligence, UFOs, quantum mechanics, spirituality.
I have to ask why. We've been talking about legal loopholes, vaccine patents, and vegetable diets. Why the sudden jump to aliens?
It feels like a complete non sequitur, doesn't it? Like, I'm angry about my medical license, so let's go look for UFOs. But if you look at the structure of their belief system, it's actually a incredibly logical progression.
Walk me through that logic.
It starts with the placebo effect.
Yeah.
Flavio used this as the bridge.
Okay, the placebo effect.
Mainstream science universally admits the placebo effect exists. It's the baseline for every single drug trial. We know that if you give someone a sugar pill and tell them it will cure them a certain percentage, sometimes up to 40%, will actually physically get better. Their blood pressure drops, their pain vanishes.
But biology says a sugar pill is inert. It shouldn't do anything.
Exactly. So if the pill isn't doing the work, the mind is. The belief is altering the biology. Flavio's argument is science acknowledges that it happens, but it cannot explain how.
It ignores the mechanism because it doesn't fit the materialist model.
It's a black box.
Right. And Flavio argues that if the mind controls the body, then consciousness is primary. Matter is secondary. And if you accept that consciousness is the fundamental force of the universe, then you have to look at all the other things mainstream science ignores.
Like what?
Like consciousness existing outside the body, near-death experiences, telepathy, and yes, non-human intelligence.
So the argument essentially is the establishment lied to you about the virus. They lied to you about the treatments. They're blind to the power of the mind. So maybe they are wrong about the nature of reality itself.
Exactly. It's a theory of everything approach. They are breaking out of the materialist box entirely. They are bringing in people like Pierre Capel to discuss quantum mechanics. It's a massive attempt to re-enchant the world.
But isn't there a massive risk here? I mean, they're trying to gain credibility for their medical arguments. Doesn't pivoting to UFOs make them look, well, like whoppies?
That is the massive gamble they are taking. They are leaning into the stigma. They are saying, you already call us crazy for talking about ivermectin, so we might as well talk about aliens, too.
It's a total rejection of the mainstream's approval.
They do not care about being taken seriously by the establishment anymore. They're building their own seriousness.
It's a bold move. It's basically saying we're going to question absolutely everything.
Everything. No topic is off limits anymore.
Which brings us to the final thought, the outro, and specifically the lighthouse metaphor.
Yes, the merchandise.
They gave out a tote bag with a quote on it that read, "A lighthouse doesn't search for drowning people. It stands there and shines light."
It's a really profound statement of their new philosophy.
Unpack it for us.
Think about what a lighthouse actually does. It doesn't have a lifeboat. It doesn't jump into the water to save you. It doesn't swim out to drag you to shore.
It's entirely passive.
It's stoic. It just stands on the rock and signals, here's the danger and here is the land. The message is, we are not your saviors. The speakers, like Flavio Illin's Big Tree, they're not going to fix the system for you. They are just illuminating the reality.
The implication being you have to swim yourself.
Yes, it is a message of radical self-reliance. If you drown, it's because you didn't look at the light or you simply didn't swim hard enough.
It's a major shift away from the nanny state or the paternalistic doctor who fixes you. It puts a burden of survival squarely on the individual.
And they're building the infrastructure for this swimming. They talked extensively about collectives.
Yes, Bundle. It's a collective purchasing initiative for energy healthcare supplements.
So if the main system is too expensive or too corrupt, we just build our own system.
Parallel societies. That is exactly where this is heading. They're suggesting that we are moving into a world where there are two distinct realities.
One reality relies on the system, which is large-scale, corporate, expensive, and government-regulated.
The other reality relies on collectives, which are privacy-focused, direct buying, self-healing, and deeply skeptical.
It raises a massive, massive question for the future. If trust in the main system is as broken as these speakers claim, how sustainable is a society with two completely different operating systems?
That is the provocative final thought we want to leave you with. Can a civilization function when half the population believes the other half is part of a mafia?
Can we coexist when one side views the other as diseased and the other views them as whoppies? What happens when those two societies have to share a highway or a water supply?
We are seeing the formation of a distinct subculture, complete with its own awards, its own media, its own supply chains, and its own science.
And its own truth. The Veritas Award literally means truth. They are claiming ownership of the truth, separate from the institutions that used to guard it.
It's a lot to process. Whether you agree with them or not, you simply cannot ignore the energy in that hall. The battle for science wasn't just a conference, it was a declaration of independence.
And with Battle Beyond Science coming in September, it seems they are just getting started.
Indeed. We encourage you, our listener, to be curious. Ask the hard questions. Look at the light, look at the rocks, and decide for yourself which way you want to swim.
That's the only way to do it.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll catch you on the next one.